Before this video gets going, and before I go off on my usual angry tirade, I'm just going to make a serious point that at the US Capitol riots that took place last week, police officer Brian Sicknick was murdered. These apparent freedom-loving all-American heroes beat him to death with a fire extinguisher. So my condolences go out to the officer's family, and I hope those responsible are captured as soon as possible and are prosecuted as far as the law allows. Normal service will now be resumed. What the merry fuck happened last week? I put my TV on and thought I was watching a Hollywood disaster movie. It turned out to just be the news. After a large group of heavily armed protesters who looked like goatees which had become sentient descended on the US Capitol building with the blessing of the President of the USA. Now, I'm not anti-Republican, but I am anti-Trump. He encouraged his followers to stop the steal because he still has this deluded belief that he might have won the election, despite all the investigations and the recounts that show that Joe Biden won the election by getting more votes. And I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden, but then I'm British, so my opinion counts for shit. But now we've seen what Trump can do. He can get Americans to attack America. So if we look at some of these armed protesters, I know they're meant to look intimidating and scary, but I don't see that. What I see are men who've got really small dicks, and they know they've got really small dicks, so they compensate for it by carrying massive guns. These guys will have been laughed at by every woman they've tried to have sex with. Maybe that's why they're so angry all the time. The same thing applies to guys who drive really big cars. I've got a Mini. Some of the protesters got into the building, and that's when things get really weird. Because watching the news, it looked like they were being led by the lead singer from Jamiroquai. Now that's not him, but JK did go on social media to say he had no part of it. Although that would have been super weird if the guy from the music video with the floor moves around, who was always top of the leaderboard on Top Gear's star in a reasonably priced car, woke up one day and thought, right, let's go fuck up Congress. The protester in question goes by the name Jake Angeli, and he's a well-known conspiracy theorist and a big figure in the QAnon world. And I've done QAnon before, but a quick recap. People who believe the QAnon conspiracy theory think there is a worldwide cabal run by the American Democrats who are kidnapping, abusing and murdering children, and that Donald Trump is in a covert war to fight them. How much of that sounds likely? In fact, the most unlikely part is Donald Trump doing anything covertly. He would have told us within seconds. That's how we know there are no aliens at Area 51. Within minutes of his inauguration, he would have told us there are aliens and somehow blamed it on Obama. So inside the building, the Jamiroquai lookalike met up with the village people, but then it transpired they didn't really know what they were doing. They wandered around for a bit, did a bit of light looting and took those all-important felony selfies. Because if you are committing a crime like treason, it's important to have a photographic record proving that you're there. In fact, most of these guys have now been arrested. But there's a pandemic on. If the stupid bastards had worn face coverings, most of them wouldn't have been nicked. So let's take a look at one of these protesters. This guy, who's got his foot up on Nancy Pelosi's desk, has come straight out of the Ladybird book of lazy stereotypes. He's a gun rights activist from Arkansas. You know, this is a man who buys condoms to go to a family reunion, who was written angrily to Pornhub after he watched an incest video and found out afterwards they were only acting, they weren't really related. 4 of the protesters died, and although that's a tragedy for their families, I think we can agree they sort of brought it on themselves. Now, there was a rumour that a guy had shot himself in the testicles with a taser, and I was praying for that to be true, but it wasn't. The gentleman who died in this instance was this chap, who looks both sane and well balanced. He phoned his wife, now his widow, saying he was thrilled to be there, and he was that excited he gave himself a heart attack. And there was this lady, an armed forces veteran and prominent conspiracy theorist, and on the way to DC she tweeted, "Nothing can stop us now." And that turned out to be rather a poor choice of words, because shortly after that she was shot and killed by the police. She thought nothing could stop her, but it turns out a bullet through the spinal cord will do it. As the dust began to settle, Some of the protesters said the violence had been caused by Antifa. Our survey said the FBI said there was no evidence Antifa were involved, and that makes sense because they're not that organised. And I've got no love for Antifa because to me, the far left and the far right are opposite sides of the same coin. They're both as fucking bad as each other. And this whole thing that we're anti-fascist, well, most people are anti-fascist. I'm anti-fascist, but I don't feel the need to put a scarf around my face and throw bricks at the authorities. But although there weren't any anti-fascists there were plenty of fascists, like this gentleman. His shirt says 6MWE. That stands for 6 million wasn't enough, referring to the 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis. What a delightful chap. I mean, where do you even get a shirt like that? Hello, is that fascist fashions? But what confuses me is this guy's American. He lives in a country that defeated the Nazi, but has decided to throw his lot in with history's biggest losers. And the comparisons with Nazis was even picked up by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who at the age of 73 has spoken for the first time about growing up in post-war Austria, where there were plenty of Nazis. He compared the attack on the Capitol building to Kristallnacht, when the Nazis destroyed thousands of Jewish businesses. He also said that Donald Trump will go down as the worst leader in American history. Things are pretty messed up when the fucking Terminator has got the moral high ground. Now I know the vast majority of Trump voters won't be these militant lunatics. They're ordinary, hard-working American men and women just trying to get through their lives. And I can understand to a point why people voted for Trump back in 2016 when it was him or Clinton. For a working-class American, that's like choosing which leg you want broken, but at least Trump spoke his mind. I mean, it's adamantly clear the man doesn't have a filter between his brain and his mouth. But in a country with a two-party system, when there's an election, one side has got to lose. That doesn't justify armed insurrection. And today, the social media app Parler, which is very popular with people with large guns and small penises, has been taken down. And we also know that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, has been banned from almost all social media. I think it was a mistake to ban him from Twitter. Because firstly, while he's on there, we can all laugh at him. And secondly, Twitter has done a great job of flagging up all the lies which the President has been spreading. So now he'll go elsewhere. Probably to some far-right forum where all his KKK-esque acolytes can gather around him. I'd like Donald Trump where I can see him. I know a number of Americans watch this channel. And I'll say again, I'm British, this is just my perspective. But as a child, like every other kid in the UK, I grew up dreaming of America. This magical land where everything was possible. And as an adult, I've been fortunate enough to go. And America is as good as you think it's going to be. The people are the friendliest, the most polite, the most helpful in the entire world, to the point that it's fucking exhausting. I was in Florida and I bought a bottle of water, and the lady who sold it to me said, "Have a great day, I hope that water makes you happy." It's a bottle of water. I wasn't prepared to make such an emotional commitment. So to my American friends, we know these armed arseholes isn't the majority of your country. Most of you are good, decent people. America, you're better than this. So America, I hope you can get through the next few weeks. Get rid of that stupid orange bastard and you can come back to being friends with the rest of the civilised world. Because this isn't the America I recognise. This is virtual insanity. Thanks for watching.